Today on Nova Legends podcast, I want to talk about criticizing officials. When is it appropriate? Is it appropriate? And how it should be done if it is appropriate. First of all, I like to say I'm a 18-year basketball official. I officiated at a very young age. I started when I was in college and did high school games both in Charlottesville and also in DC. And I experienced uh, some success, but also folks yelling at me. At one point, a guy tried to go get his gun, and I was instructed to leave the gym by the gym manager. That was an adult rec game down in Charlottesville. So I've experienced the good and bad of officiating, and I appreciate good officials. I use my social media to take photos of them, to when they have a good game, to make sure people know they have a good game, especially in basketball where I feel like I know the game a little bit better. But I do think it's not fair to officials if we only talk about them when they don't do a good job. We have a hard time getting officials now. First of all, there's just a general shortage of workers of any kind, but it's affected officials because they get threats. They feel like it's a thankless job, and without officials, there are no games. I know the football schedule was thrown into turmoil this last fall, high school football season, because they had to move games to different days to accommodate the officials. So whatever we do, we do need to encourage people to officiate, and by doing that, we have to make the game comfortable for them, and to for them not to have to experience threats, violence, or just needless unprofessionalism by players or coaches. But is there a time when you can criticize them, and how do we do so if there is an appropriate time? Well, I went to the Yorktown McLean soccer game the other day, and I witnessed what I thought was some of the most egregious officiating that I have seen in a soccer game. And I've seen a lot. My son was a travel soccer player who also played at Yorktown. So I know the first thing people are going to say is my perceptions of the game are going to be clouded because my son played at Yorktown. Well, first of all, I don't think it's fair. I think I'm pretty even-handed about these things, but also, my son used to play at Yorktown, so you can also argue that, look, it would be nice to have my son to feel missed. So maybe I don't, maybe I'm not so conflicted. Maybe I can be unbiased. And so I do like the Yorktown kids, but I also I know the McLean kids, and I like them too. So I am not biased in my perceptions of what I thought was poor officiating. So what happened in the game that made it so unique? Well, first of all, McLean is probably the best team in the area, and they've only lost, I believe, one game this year, and that was to Herndon. And I think they may have a tie also, but maybe just a one loss. But they've been incredible. They've got great attacking players. They have their defensive line is experienced, good size, all along, solid, very solid in the midfield as well. And they've been completely dominant this year. Yorktown, on the other hand, is a very talented team, but they've had their challenges. And on this particular night, and this is a big game. This is senior night at McLean for the McLean players, and for Yorktown players. They're winless in the district. It was a must-win game for them, but they were without at least two of the best players. Justin Millie, a tremendous defender, but's been playing attack this year, and Daniel Sandell. And they had other injuries as well. And so they were definitely playing a different type of lineup than you would normally see. But that's soccer, no excuses. Let's play. Well, the game went really. It was an excellent game. Yorktown came out in a 4-4-2, a more of a defensive 4-4-2 than you normally see, and they sat deep in with the six defenders, and they did a great job of keeping the McLean attack in front of them. And whenever a McLean attacker have the ball, and they have Gage Lyons, Joe Margita, Kath Eaton, others. I'm going to lose some of the names, but they're all extremely good attackers with great movement. They did a good job staying in front of them. And then they got some good, I don't want to say good fortune, but they were able to get a goal off a set piece when Miles, can't think of his last name, but he snuck behind the defense for a header and put Yorktown up 1-0, which was a surprise. And I have to say that the player on Yorktown goal may have appeared to the casual observer to be offsides, but he was clearly onside by when the ball was kicked, and the official got that call right. And I have to note that because I think that it's the same crew that's involved in the controversial calls that came up later on. Anyway, the game goes into halftime, and we're even. I mean, no, the game goes to halftime, and Yorktown's up 1-0. Big surprise. Well, in the second half, we play 15 more minutes, and there's nothing going on. The game's McLean is getting their attack started, and they're getting some opportunities, but Yorktown's defense is solid. And as a matter of fact, Yorktown almost gets a second goal to go up 2-0. But the McLean players, and I will say this about the McLean players, they complain at the referees a lot. They work the officials a lot. Some of them, not all of them. Some of them work the officials a lot. I saw this in the Alexandria City game when I was with the Marymount coach, and we both noticed that they complain a lot about calls, and that was a game they're up 3-0. This game, most of the calls they complain a lot, and they were hitting the ground a lot in the penalty area. I couldn't tell if any of those were penalty opportunities, but they were starting to do that, and I felt like they were trying to work the refs and get a little rattled. Yorktown was definitely in control of things with the 1-0 lead with 25 to play. Well, there's a penalty called finally after 3 flops or at least hard falls in the box. There is a penalty call. A Yorktown player, the same player that scored the goal, is trying to control the ball, going towards his own goal. And the McLean player is going away from the goal he's trying to score at. And their feet tangle up. McLean player falls down, penalty awarded. Now, look, generally you like to see penalties called. That's a big sanction when you call a penalty, huge sanction. And when you put a team at the spot, you want to make sure it's a good call. Well, the player is going away from his own goal and doesn't have possession of the ball. He's not trying to score. That's generally not the kind of play you want to call a penalty on, especially because the Yorktown player, he was just trying to dribble the ball, control the ball, and their feet collided. Player trips, penalty. Well, I have to say, I thought it was a terrible call, but the Yorktown crowd, coach, players did not overly complain. They accepted it. They went to the line. Gage Lyons made the penalty, 1-1. All in all, I have to say Yorktown was a very good sport about a play which I considered a very questionable penalty call. So the game goes on, and 2 minutes later, McLean is setting up for a corner kick. Well, it was a Nathan June puts a nice ball into the box, and Calf Eaton heads the ball to the other side of to the far side to the near side of the goal, near side of where the corner taker was. The ball hits the post, bounce back, hits the Yorktown defender on the shoulder, and the ball goes right back out of bounds. So it looks like it's going to be a corner kick again. And but the McLean players start asking for a handball. And typically what happens when a ball appears to hit shoulder, bicep, sometimes it looks like it could be a handball. Generally, it's not called, it's not intentional in the box, but it can appear. Well, this wasn't the case. This hits the shoulder, ball goes out of bounds. There's nothing there. Well, I did notice the head linesman started to walk back towards the center line. And that's a strange mechanic to me, because I think sometimes they do that when it's a goal, but no one else seemed to be afraid of that prospect. But I did notice the referee went over to talk to the head linesman. They talked for about a minute, and I guess one of the players on McLean took the ball and put the ball on the spot again. I guess he was convinced that this was going to be a penalty kick. And I was confused because I did not see the play very well when it happened. I've watched the play many times since, and I have photos of where the defender was. He was not in the goal, and clearly in the video, the ball never goes in the net. The referees never check the net if there's a hole in the net. But if the ball is not in the back of the net, there's got to be a clear reason why you're awarding a goal. I talked earlier today about how a penalty is such a big sanction. Well, awarding a goal is almost on is even more so. I mean, you have to know, you have to be sure of that to award a team a goal. So anyway, after a few more seconds, the referee pointed to the middle of the field, and it's a goal. The McLean crowd, players, coaches, two of the players on the McLean, one of the players who had the ball at the spot, they didn't even know what was going on. They didn't react right away because no one thought this was going to be a goal. No one had even asked for a goal. But soon it was clear that the referee had given a goal to McLean. So in a game where they were down 1-0, a huge derby, a huge rivalry, neighborhood rivalry, there were two questionable goals within 2 minutes and up 2-1. They could not believe their luck. Well, I watched the Yorktown coach, and I knew this was going to be a difficult pill to swallow. But Coach Carlos was very cool. He did not scream. He walked very calmly onto the field, and he discussed the matter with the referee. He tried to wave his players away because the players were dumbfounded. They were in his face, and he did not want his players to get in any kind of trouble. He needed the players. So I obviously I couldn't tell what was said to the referee, but after about a minute or so, the referee took out his yellow card and took out his red card and tossed the coach out of the game. Well, I had written somewhere, I discussed it with some coaches, he had to get thrown out of this game. First of all, there was no violence, there was no intimidation. He wasn't even disrespectful. But you're not really supposed to come onto the field. But when you have two goals given in short succession in such a big game, it was so egregious that as a coach, you almost have to send a message. I don't know many coaches that could have accepted these two calls like that. It was so beyond, and I know some of the parents on the Yorktown team, but I don't know them well, but I know some of them. And they're never a bunch of parents that scream at referees or act disrespectful. Everyone was dumbfounded. Everyone was mad. These are people that don't act like this. Now, Yorktown does have some students that get kind of wild at home games, but these are the parents that, this is kind of a sleepy bunch. And they were pissed. People I'd never seen yell were pissed. But, none of us could blame Coach Carlos because this officiating was so bad that it was almost like a reaction was almost warranted. But look, it was respectful. It was not intimidating. And probably almost most importantly, it was spontaneous. One thing that I think officials have to deal with that it's unfair to them is that people, when you make a bad call, people won't let it go. They keep talking about something that happened a long time ago. This wasn't the case. It was a spontaneous reaction. Coach was measured, but it was one of those things where anyone there who understood what had just happened in those last 2 minutes pretty much understood where he was coming from. So where does this leave us? Well, first of all, I don't want to advocate giving the officials a hard time. We need them. We need good officials. I think we should continue to encourage people to get into officiating. Probably most importantly, when folks do a good job, tell them they do a good job. Tell officials we appreciate you. You're doing a great job. On the other hand, when you have a game of this magnitude, I think officials and people that send officials to games have to expect a certain level of proficiency. And if that doesn't happen, if the officials aren't good enough, or maybe just had a bad night, there is going to be some pushback. And that's to be expected. And that's part of putting the stripes on. And I don't think we necessarily should look at it, the people that argue at officials, as long as it's done respectfully, spontaneously, as somehow bad people, unprofessional, whatever you want to say. But if you get a game of that magnitude that wrong, I think it's reasonable to expect people to react. Thanks for listening.